Thank you so much, Krista. Without Krista arranging, I'm so excited that Krista arranged this very special evening for all of us. I want to thank all of you for taking the time to watch Chasing Childhood and to join us for this incredibly special dialogue with best-selling author, speaker, blogger, activist, parent, and so much more, Julie Lythcott-Haims. This is not the first time that the San Ramon Valley Council of PTAs has welcomed Julie to our community. She was our keynote speaker at the parenting conference in February of 2016. And at that time, she delivered a captivating and thought-provoking presentation about raising resilient kids. If you have not already, read How to Raise an Adult. One of my favorite quotes from there is, "There is no doubt that we parents are motivated by love, but we parents need to let our kids take more self-chosen risks." Julie holds degrees from Stanford, Harvard Law, and California College of the Arts. She's the former dean of Freshmen at Stanford, a New York Times bestselling author. She has a TED Talk, How to Raise Successful Kids Without Overparenting. It's been viewed almost 5 million times. Her second book is the critically acclaimed and award-winning prose poetry memoir, Real American, which illustrates her experience as a Black and biracial person in white spaces. Her third book, Your Turn, How to Be an Adult, has been called Groundbreakingly Frank, Guide to Adulthood. Julie is such an acclaimed speaker, and she's focused on helping humans find their true, I love this, their true north. At its core, her work is about the obstacles we face as humans striving to thrive and how we can unlock our most authentic selves. Please join me in welcoming Julie.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Appreciate the invitation to come back across the bay to be with y'all. Thanks to the 130 plus people who've decided to make this conversation a part of their Thursday night. It's great to be with you. Really looking forward to this conversation. So the one thing you didn't say that I think is an important, perhaps the most important part of my resume when it comes to this conversation is I'm a mom. And I want you to know that every time I say something that makes you flinch or makes you uncomfortable or makes you say, is she talking about me? Just know that whatever I'm telling you, I'm trying to tell myself too. I've got a 22-year-old son, a 20-year-old daughter. I raised them in the Palo Alto Unified, which is so much like your community. I realize nothing is quite like your community, but you know, we are similar. So I'm here, I get it. And I'm interested in helping us all get to a slightly better place or maybe even a wildly better place.
Great. Thank you so much, Julie. I'm going to go ahead and just go right into the questions. So Chasing Childhood, so many of us were able to watch it and got so much positive feedback about it. It really emphasized the power of play. And so I wanted to start with, what do you do for play?
Me as a person?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I was not prepared for that. Oh my goodness. Well, I tell you what, I love puzzles. And I love to do the New York Times crossword puzzle. I like to do it online, so it'll tell me if I got it correct. I like to do Wordle, that new puzzle. If you haven't checked out Wordle, this daily word puzzle, it's awesome. I like to play Chinese checkers. This was a game my father taught me when I was little, and my mother just brought back into our life recently. I like to play poker. I'm competitive, and I really enjoy that. So I love board games. I love Telestrations and Taboo. My brain is not agile enough anymore to handle the games my 20-somethings play, these card games that have all these different rules and whatnot. I have a hard time keeping track, but a good old-fashioned board game or card game, I really, really love. And at the holidays, my husband doesn't like to play games. So I've been this 34-year relationship with an amazing guy, and he doesn't love games. So I always have to sort of convince him. Or so when the holidays come around, I'm like, oh, good, we're going to have people who I know play games. Now, the reason he doesn't like games is because the Lythcott family is very competitive and we can make it not fun. So I try to make sure we kind of keep a lid on the competitiveness. But yeah, games and singing. I sing. I love making harmony. I love just being with other humans and watching what our voices can do with one another. So that might not have been the answer that you were expecting, but that is the truth.
The truth is great. Thanks, Julie. So during the COVID shutdowns, there was discussion that we should be reassessing what is and isn't working with education and around kids' stress levels. And now it seems like kids are just as stressed as before. Have we learned anything from the pandemic?
Hmm. Um, Kids are just as stressed as before. I think that means that maybe we're not learning from the pandemic. And yet I also know that kids are stressed or that their mental health is suffering because the pandemic is keeping them away from their peers. And that's what they need almost more than anything. So I think it's sort of two different things we're talking about. I think we have learned in the pandemic that it's amazing to just know my kid is getting themselves on Zoom and getting themselves to class, and I'm over here in the other room on my machine at work, that I don't need to micromanage everything. In fact, I can't, because we're all coexisting at work and home in separate spaces. We have to rely on our kids to follow the expectations without us necessarily being able to hover over everything. I had a parent reach out to me and say, you know what, I was so proud that my second grader got himself to school, air quotes, online every day, when we weren't able to kind of manage that because we were trying to manage where the kindergartner was. So I think the pandemic opened up possibilities for more freedom and independence for kids. At the same time, I know in some families it made it totally possible for parents to be on top of every little thing, really, really micro nano managing. So I think it depends on the family. I will end by saying, to sort of jump back to what I was saying in the middle, kids are struggling and suffering because we are a social species. We need each other. We thrive when we're around people, and our kids are desperate for that. And so I'm now at the point where I'm not an educator, I'm not a policymaker. I'm just yearning for us to figure out solutions that mean our kids are able to connect, play, be with, hang out with each other, because they need that for their developmental wellness. And almost everything else can be taught at some point, but human interaction is something you got to do slowly along the way and get better and better and better at it if you hope to be a human adult who can interact well with humans. So it's never in the curriculum, really. It's recess, I suppose, but it's probably the most fundamental thing for their wellness. It's just unstructured time with each other.
Yeah, we received so many questions around that specific topic, like so many questions around how the pandemic has affected our kids' ability to socialize. These were the golden years for them to be able to interact with each other, to see each other. And I thought that this question was a really interesting one, given kind of the theme of the movie, is how do we then help these kids learn those skills without arranging the play, right? So how do we help them with something that they've lost because of the pandemic without kind of going back into the overparenting question?
Well, my first answer now becomes my third. I think board games and old-fashioned play is really our savior here. I would have, it's easy for me to say what I would do. My kids are not, K-12 anymore. But I think what I would do is say, all right, y'all are going to hang out together, and nobody has a device. Take the devices away. The device is sustainable. Here at 3 or 4 or 10 or 20 board games, just go, figure it out. And, let them do whatever it is they're going to do. I think old-fashioned play, forts, and running around outside, weird games that you can make up outside. And, we're blessed with great weather here. I think we have this tendency to want to make sure they're all getting along and everything's fine. And, we have to sort of take a deep breath and say to ourselves, you know what, I'm going to be over there. I don't need to watch the entire time. If I watch, then I'm going to insert myself and tell them how to play slightly differently, or tell them how to fix this one thing to make it better. And that's where we're interrupting that freedom and that independence and that wildness with our own need to protect and create. So I think that's what I would do. A lot of games, a lot of, and making sure the technology is not anywhere near them.
It was interesting, the questions that we received from like parents of high schoolers who would say, how do we help them? Is it too late? Or there was just a question that came in around like, like recess in elementary school is like the monkey bars and swings and all of that. But what does play look like in junior high when the kids will have their phones and that's what they're pulling out? So kind of that question of what does this look for junior and high school level kids?
Let's answer that question by asking us to all reflect as adults on how do we play, right? I answered that I like board games and singing. And both of those things, I said I like singing with other people, right? Humans hanging out with one another without the imperative to make something useful of it or create a project to please someone else, humans will figure out things to do. So, what does play look like for teenagers? Pre-pandemic is like hanging near each other's bodies, and just sort of rolling and roly-poly on each other, right? That's what they're supposed to do. It saddens me that we've gotten to this, like, what does play look like? That's how far we are. Here's another way to answer the question. Go back to your own memory of yourself at 12 or 14 or 16 and remember what your afternoons look like. Remember what your weekends look like. Many of us, I'd wager most of us, were not in these highly structured high school environments where it was school, activity, homework, not enough sleep, repeat. We had more room. And summon that memory of what you were doing. And the answer may be, I wasn't really doing much of anything. And don't you dare judge that. That's not a bad thing. We all need more downtime, more space to breathe, more space when nothing is happening, where we can just lollygag about for a while. Okay. I know this sounds anathema. Like, how's my kid going to get into college if I let them breathe, if I let them have free time? I'm here to say their mental health and wellness will be enhanced and they'll be more successful wherever they go because they haven't led this robotic childhood. So I think what I'm trying to say is stop worrying about what play looks like. Get out of kids' way and have confidence that if you've removed the devices, they'll figure it out. They'll figure out ways to interact and do silly things. They come up with different words, different languages, different rules, different systems, different things. I don't want you to abandon them so they go all Lord of the Flies on you, but trust that kids innately have a sense of what play in a relaxed environment looks like. Maybe you want to seed it a little bit with wood and nails and hammers. I know some of you are afraid of that, but there's that playground in Berkeley, I think, that's all about a maker space. But if you create a maker space, don't have adults hovering there saying, let's do it this way. Don't you want to do this? Just no, give them the materials and back out of the room. And go play with your own friends. That's another thing. We can be better at role modeling for our kids that adults have downtime and that we fill it by hanging out with our friends. I'm 54 and I remember when my parents would go to parties, cocktail parties or dinner gatherings with other families, and they'd bring us along and all the kids would end up in the rec room or in the attic or in the family room. And the adults laughing together made me feel safe. It was like the world is safe and good because my parents are relaxed and happy, and I'm hearing jokes and I'm hearing laughter and I'm hearing, a glass crash to the floor because somebody knocks it and they laugh and they figured out something about adults playing gave me this innate sense of everything's right in the world. So I think what I'm saying is we could probably be better role models for it. It's good for us and it's good for our kids too.
Absolutely. Thanks, Julie. Do you think there's any role with online socializing or online play? Is there any upside to devices in terms of that component of play?
Absolutely. So I was going to give that caveat. I said, get rid of the devices, which does not mean I'm anti-devices. There are just times when, as at dinner, as at when you're out at a restaurant, as in many circumstances, it's like phones are not appropriate. We are here for something else other than what you can get on your phone. But yes, there are definitely important spaces and places where kids can be in community with other kids. There are great places for them to hang out online. There are games to play and there are apps where they can connect with each other. And there's so much positive that can come. Often kids can only because of the internet and apps and games and social media They can find kids who are like them in terms of identity, background, disability, interest in ways we couldn't because it wasn't possible. We only had access to the kids in our town. Kids today have access to kids around the world. Obviously, there are important safety rails to put on the internet with our kids, but yes, tremendous good can be found there as well. I think I would advocate for balance, that you don't have a life that's entirely like this. And here's where I've not been a great role model. I couldn't bring myself to tell my kids to not keep their phones plugged in their rooms at night. Many families say, look, you charge your phone in the downstairs, it's not going to be in your bedroom. I'm that parent who regrets that I wasn't brave enough to say, you know what, at a certain time of day, your device goes over here. And oh, by the way, mine will as well. I have that regret, and I want to pass that on to anyone who's, with younger kids, like, recognize that there is a role for technology to play, and then it's time to put it away so that they get better sleep, so that they, don't feel that they have to have a phone in their hands in order to know who they are.
And that's not over interfering.
No, we have to be the adults. We have to articulate rules and boundaries and expectations. Absolutely.
I wanted to get
That's
into
nice. Elizabeth in the chat is saying, when it comes to device play, I find it helps to distinguish between creative activities versus activities where they're just consuming content. That's a nice distinction. My son still plays Minecraft. Okay. He and his 22-year-old guy friends play Minecraft, and they have a Minecraft server, whatever that is. And, a bunch of them, they bring their computers over to one place and they all do it, or they do it separately, and it brings them joy. These are guys who've been friends since kindergarten. Some of them didn't come into the group until high school, and they will play this game for hours. And Minecraft is a very cooperative thing. And I hear them working stuff out with each other and rooting for each other. I'm like, and it's valid. It's valid and good. I just want to be sure my son also reads books and goes for walks and gets on his bike, and as a 22-year-old, I don't have a lot of say over that anymore. I could just try to model it. But when they're younger, you can say, hey, it's time to put that down. Let's go for a bike ride. Let's get our legs and arms and our hearts pumping. We can set expectations and have standards in our homes. We have to.
Yeah, it goes back to balance, like you were talking about. I wanted to get into some questions that we got around, our district is a very academically high achieving district, a lot of focus on the strength of our academics, and there's a lot of pressure as a result. And so I wanted to ask, how do we get out of the mindset that our kids are going to be going to Stanford when we feel like that is a reflection on us if they get in, and we feel like it's a reflection on us if they don't?
Well, okay. Yes, I know. I've been there. I met my husband there. I enrolled my children in preschool there. I was looking after other people's 18 to 22-year-olds there. How could I not want and expect my own kids to go there? So I very much wanted that bumper sticker that said Stanford for my kids, for me, to show everybody else, look, my kids are at Stanford. So I have very much been of that mindset. And in writing How to Raise an Adult, I began to appreciate the very, very unbeatable odds of any one of our kids getting into a place like Stanford. There are simply too many people applying, a whole lot of kids coming out of very good school districts, having done very well. So thousands of kids who are capable of thriving at a place like Stanford, and they can't admit anywhere near the majority of the kids who are qualified to be there. And so I think it was Sidonia Dalby at Smith College who put it to me in a way that I could relate to. She said, Julie, what I tell parents, she's an admissions officer at Smith College, a women's college back east. She said, Julie, if there's a 5 to 10% chance of rain, do you take a raincoat? If there's a 5 to 10% chance of rain, do you take a raincoat? Do you take an umbrella? No. Why? Because it's not going to rain. Well, there's a 5 to 10% at the time, 5 to 10% chance of getting into a place like Stanford. Now it's a 2 to 3% chance. It's a 2 to 3% chance of rain. You're going to take an umbrella? No, it's not going to rain. Okay. Yet, why do we think somehow our kids are going to beat those odds? Why do we steer childhood toward the great unlikelihood that they're going to be in that 2 or 3%? I'm not saying it's not something to want or to hope for, but I am saying let's not steer our family life and childhoods such that toward that really unlikely outcome, such that our beloved children feel like losers in our eyes when they don't beat those odds. Okay. They ought to be elated that they're graduating high school, that they've worked hard, that they have great friends, that maybe they've done some activities that really matter to them. You know, they know how to work hard. They know how to bounce back. We ought to be delighted that they are prepared to thrive wherever they go, that it isn't the brand name of the school that matters. It's who our kids are and their capacity wherever they go. And I think I got really clear on that while doing the research that became How to Raise an Adult. So those admissions odds were sort of a, wow, it's like winning the lottery. Like, wow, that happened, instead of, oh, we're losers because we didn't win the lottery. You don't feel like a loser if you don't win the lottery. You just feel elated if it turned out in your favor. And so I think it's about knowing that there are, in a country with 3,000 four-year colleges, there are therefore 150 that are the top 5%. So can we widen our blinders, look at more than the top 5 or the top 20, right? Look at 150 schools, be willing to entertain a much bigger picture. Know the research from, you can read about it in Malcolm Gladwell's book, David and Goliath. Says it's advantageous for a kid to go one tier below the best school they got into because they're more likely to be in the top at that school, which means they have access to the small classes and the research and the best faculty. And that's what'll prepare them for more opportunity in the workplace or grad school. So there are sound research-based reasons for us to say, you know what, I wouldn't want my kid to go to that place. I actually think they, will have more opportunities if they go to this other place. So that's where it comes down to our ego. If we need our kid to go to that school so we can feel worthy, then we need therapy. And I highly recommend it. Here's the metaphor that I like to use. It's like when we need our kid to get that outcome and we create a childhood and a home environment and hover over their homework and make sure they've done this and that and argue with every teacher, and we just have to get them to that school. It's like we have gotten a dog that we are entering into the Westminster Dog Show, and we are going for best in breed, best in class, best in show. And we are showing the world this lovely dog we've trained to run this course and jump through these hoops. And then we get the trophy. That's what that bumper sticker is, right? Or maybe if the dog show doesn't do it for you, they're like thoroughbreds and we're preparing them for the Kentucky Derby. But you know what happens with those thoroughbreds when they fracture a bone? They get put down. They are useless, right? And it's a terrifying thing to imagine when we equate it to childhood. But that's what this driven to the most unbeatable odds childhood does to some kids. And you know it where you are, and I know it where I am. When are we going to stand up and say, not on our watch? Childhood should not create a feeling of hopelessness and helplessness in children such that they contemplate taking their own lives. Not on our watch. When are we going to stand up and say, my child's mental health and wellness is the greatest trophy that I could ever possess? It's not mine to possess. That's right. My child's mental health and wellness matters more to me than any trophy I feel comes from their GPA or from the college that they got into. They need for us to care about their wellness and their dreams. And if our dreams are pinned on how this kid does in AP Bio or that kid does in AP Calculus or whatever it is, that's where and when I said therapy, I meant it. It is worth investing in. Why am I living vicariously through my child? Why are my children's outcomes a reflection of my worth? What is so lacking, so insecure in me that I need this kid to do that so I can feel confident my friends will respect me? It's our work to do. And then when we do it, we get out of our kids' way and we can delight in who they are with confidence that a kid who is loved unconditionally and supported around being who they are will make their own way. And I know I'm going long on this answer, but I'm going to tell one quick story. You may remember when I was with you 6 winters ago, I might have told this story about my baby girl. My baby girl, Avery, was at Bing Nursery School on the Stanford campus, where they were pulling me to the side and praising me for her watercolors. She was 4. And one day she made 10 of them about this size. And they said, we didn't want to just pack them up in the backpack. We want you to, and this is my representation. This is not her watercolor. This is me today. Okay. They said, well, Julie, we want you to know your kid's got an artistic sensibility. Frankly, we don't see in 4-year-olds. Okay. We wanted to just point this out because she's got some real talent. And I smiled and I nodded and I patted my 4-year-old on the head and acted like I cared, but I didn't care. Because inside my head was saying, yeah, but that's just art. That's not going to get her into Stanford. And it wasn't until I was in office hours as a dean working with someone else's 4.0 pre-med sophomore daughter who was miserable, high achieving, and in tears because she just wanted a break from the pre-med curriculum and extracurriculars and summer jobs that her parents were making her do. And she was trying not to cry in my office. And I just said, what would you do if it was just up to you? And she said, I'd like to work with rescue animals. And I said, all right, let's look at that. How can I support you having that conversation with your parents? And she said, I just think if I do as what they say, maybe they'll go easier on my younger siblings. Like I have to be the one to be the doctor because maybe then they'll go easy on my brother and sister whom I love. My God. I came home and realized my baby girl is going to say the same thing one day. I was good at art, but my parents didn't value it. Well, it's been 6 years since I might have told you that story. I usually tell it in my keynotes, which is why I think I probably did. She's a 20-year-old college junior with a major in cultural anthropology and dance. She's doing drama productions, in a cast member, choreography, backstage. She's teaching dance in the town where her university is located. She paints and she draws and she sings, and she's the music director of her a cappella group, and she's looking at internships in arts management. My daughter is an artist. I'm so proud of that now. But I was the parent who dismissed it because I thought you're only acceptable as a human if you're engineering, law, business, medical, etc. Okay, I've learned that. And I want you to see through my tears, I was unable to see my kid. I want, if this resonates with you, I want you to do what I did, which is ask myself, what am I so afraid of? Why do I need to turn her into somebody else in order to feel proud of her? What's going on in me? I'm delighted that I did that work within myself. I'm proud of the journey and I'm proud to be where I am. But please, if any of this resonates, lean into that conversation and see if you can't sort it out. Thank you, Vanessa. Appreciate that you're crying and you can relate. And I'm glad you're saying it here in public because it's big to say these things in public. It is.
I have to say, let's see if I can show the book, How to Raise an Adult, was so instrumental. There you go. Thank you. You don't have the background. In terms of the redefining what the definition of success is.
Right.
And I feel like we've only had one definition of success, and everything you just spoke to shows that there's a whole nother definition, and it's really about happiness, right?
Yeah. I mean, I think success is something we should each define for ourselves, by which I mean, I know, and this is really now pulling from my newest book, which is for young adults, Your Turn. I know from working with so many young people over the decades that, and my own life, which was corporate law, academia, now I'm writing books and speaking about them in amazing places like San Ramon Valley. I know that true career, workplace, professional joy comes when we're not just good at it, but we also love it. That Venn diagram of I'm good at it and I love it, that's the work you want to be doing. Otherwise, if you're just good at it, you feel like a drone, like I'm good at this, everyone applauds me. I was good at corporate law and they were treating me kindly and they paid me very well and I hated it. And I had a knot in my stomach every Sunday because I had to go back. And I couldn't figure it out. Like I did everything right. I went to college, I went to law school. I'm here. What did I do wrong? Well, I chose a field in pursuit of other people's applause. Other people seem to praise that work. So even though I'd gone to law school to be a public interest lawyer, not earn very much money, but help people, I took a corporate offer instead because I was so insecure. I needed the implicit approval of society that came with it. And I turned out to be miserable. So I had learned that lesson. And now I'm very interested in passing it on to young people, but also to parents, right? We are not here to be drones. We are here to be humans, figuring out what we're good at, what we love, and going in that direction.
Thanks, Julie. I know everyone just really appreciates your honesty.
Yeah.
I think a lot of parents really, I think the film resonated with so many parents in this community. And there's kind of this desire of like, can we be talking about this more?
Yeah.
And I really liked this question, so I wanted to ask it of you,
Yeah.
is how do we talk about this topic of how we can really support our kids and do things differently than maybe it was done for us with other parents without sounding judgmental?
Well, this is where I think leadership comes into play. The PTA, the Council of PTAs, local mental health practitioners, clergy, coaches, convening a conversation, as happened in Wilton, Connecticut, in response to the Chasing Childhood situation. They convened a task force on play. They decided they had to have a conversation as a community about how it felt to be a kid there and what they wanted to do to try to change the dynamic. And so if the community is having a conversation, I think that's inherently not judgmental. Then a parent can say to the other, like, hey, are you going to that talk? It sounds kind of interesting. I'm interested. Won't you come with me? Because I want to make a change in my family, but I can't make a change unless we all make a change. I think that acknowledges this is a systemic societal situation and every one of us is just trying to do the right thing. And it's sort of like our community is a barge that is kind of veered off course. And we're just trying to all be little tugboats that move the barge back in a more healthy direction. I got all kinds of metaphors: dogs, thoroughbreds, barges. But it does take courage to speak out against a system or stand up to a set of peers who seem sure that micromanaging their kids every moment is love. It's not. Micromanagement doesn't feel good in the workplace and it doesn't feel good in the family. And that's what all of this over monitoring and over parenting is. And so I think the way to do it is to own it, is to say, in my family, we're exhausted. My kids are doing too much homework. There's too many activities. We need a break. I'd like to reach out and ask anyone else who feels that way, let's have a coffee. Let's talk about a few things we're going to do differently around here. Here's the bravest thing. Dare to ask the kids in San Ramon Valley, what does it feel like to be a kid? What does it feel like? What does life feel? And the pandemic, of course, has put a damper on everything. But I think my point is to really know what childhood is like, where you are, and to really start to get clues as to what needs to change. Ask a kid adjectives to describe what your life is like and see if you can bring yourself to face those adjectives. Okay. Childhood, they should say things like laughter, fun, love this class. I love doing it. Like they should be joyful. They're children. And instead they just feel like they're going that through the motions and that life is exhausting. And I think we have to start asking them, like, what would you change if you could? That's another thing to ask. What would you change about your school day or your life as a student, if you could? You know, you're looking for low-hanging fruit of things that the community can connect to and say, you know what, for example, every break will be a literal break. We're not going to assign homework over breaks. We're not going to have the teachers having to do work over, like, we all need a break. We all need some downtime. Let's have true holidays that aren't, okay, that's when we're going to catch up on everything. You know, let's make sure exams are before holidays, not, you know, study over the holidays for your exams. That's an example. That's something got to challenge success here. Denise Clark Pope's work. You know, things like, can we agree that we're not going to have a grade portal? Do y'all have that grade portal? Yes, I think it's ruining everything. I'm sorry if there's a software engineer on the call who's like, I created that thing. I'm sorry. I think it's ruining everything because technology and the expectations schools implicitly have, like, check your email, parents, check the portal, check the portal. It's implying to parents, like, if you don't check the portal, always you're a bad parent. Well, I'm here to say, don't check the portal. Let's return a sense of trust to our kids. I trust you're going to tell me if something's not going well. You can always come to me if you're struggling, kid. The portal is now a piece of technology that interferes with or supplants what used to be trusted communication between parents and kids, kids and teachers, teachers and parents. We don't have to have conversations anymore because a piece of software tells us a piece of data. Okay, the portal is crushing kids' confidence. They feel watched, they feel observed, surveilled academically because we know their grades before they know, often, if they're not checking. It's just absurd. Okay. Also, the surveillance apps, I think, are absolutely, I predict the surveillance apps will one day soon be linked to mental health harm accruing in children. If you think about it, until recently, 24/7 surveillance was reserved for incarcerated people and people in psychiatric facilities at significant likelihood of harming themselves or others. But now it's a normal aspect of childhood that you will always be watched. Someone will always know where you are. Think back on your own childhood and those delicious moments when you were just hanging out with your friends. Where have those gone? What can we do to bring them back while still feeling like our kids are safe? Our kids are safe when they have the experiences that teach them to be safe. They're not safe because you're watching them on your phone. They need to learn how to use good judgment. They need to learn how to try things and try a little bit more and try a little bit more. They need to learn the consequences of their actions. Okay, we've got to stop letting technology stand in for trust and communication.
Thanks, Julie. You were talking about systemic changes, and so there was a question about how do we change the K through 12 curriculum to be student-directed, project-based, and less test-oriented?
Well, this person has all the ideas, I can tell, which is great. I'm not a K-12 educator, so I really am just making stuff up if I answer that question. But here's what I will say. I'm very anti-portal, and I think that's something that school districts and leaders have to really take a hard look at. I think too often we have a rescue policy. So if a kid forgot their homework or their lunch or their sports equipment or their coat, we let parents bring it. And that's really problematic for a couple reasons that are very different from one another. The first is what the kid learns is my parent will always rescue me, which feels loving. And in an emergency, if it's like the big game, yes, bring the lacrosse stick. You know, you don't want them to like have to sit out of the big game because they left their equipment at home. It's the big recital, bring the recorder, bring the clarinet. Okay, but if it's run-of-the-mill routine day, a piece of homework got left behind, you know, what you want to do is say, I'm so sorry, honey, your homework, your backpack is your responsibility. You might say, I'll bring it one more time. But if it continues to happen, you know, you're going to have to figure out another solution. The sting of having forgotten, the sting of having to sit out, the sting of getting the zero is what teaches the child's brain something like, that didn't feel good. What am I going to do next time differently? That's how they start to develop the executive function, by seeing, oh, that didn't work out. Let me try something else. Okay. We have to have the courage to parent for tomorrow, not be so worried about today. We want the kid to know how to do it themselves tomorrow. So we have to stop doing it every step of the way for them. The second reason the rescue policy is harmful is that it privileges the privileged. If there are any working class families in the district, they can't drop everything to bring the forgotten things. Their work environment is not flexible and just let them leave work and drive home and get their kids things. This is where kids who grow up less well off often have more self-reliance, more accountability, more responsibility, because they have not been in a family environment with all of this extra time and money and the sense of, oh, I'll just handle everything. Their parents haven't been able to provide that. And those kids emerge stronger. It's a beautiful irony, and I think we could learn from it. Another example, I have a little handout here, not a handout, but a visual, which works on Zoom. Every single teacher could start the year at back to school night and say, parent involvement is so important to your kids' development. The research shows that. We firmly believe that. Let me show you what parent involvement is okay in my class and no way in my class. You could be clever and funny, right? And you make all kinds of examples. Like in my math class in the 3rd grade, this parental involvement is okay. And this crosses the line to no way. And then you come up with a funny example of absurd things no parent would ever do. And we can all giggle about it, right? Or in my science class in the 10th grade, this is what I want to see you doing, but don't cross the line. Okay. In other words, tell parents like, this is helpful. This is bad. Okay. Be specific, grade specific, class specific. We all want to help. And we have to remember I've taken algebra, so I shouldn't do my kids' algebra. So what's the appropriate type of parental involvement? So my kid will feel supported and that I'm here as a resource, but that I'm not undermining their agency by really outright doing the project, the essay, the math, etc. for them. And teachers can help by saying this crosses the line. You can also be project-based, not send very much homework home. And that's how you can prevent parents from doing homework. Let's get real. Like somebody just put in the chat, Madeline Levine's book, she says 90% of students admit they were cheating. How many parents, if we did an anonymous survey, would admit they're sometimes doing their kids' homework outright? Okay, it's happening. Maybe none of you here, but the other parents who aren't here tonight, right? It's happening because it has to. How are we supposed to get it done? They can't get it done. It's too much. How are they going to get an A unless I do it, right? So we need to tell some truth telling and kind of reset some things to get this barge back in a healthy and sane direction.
Thanks, Julie. I'm going to start to go through some of the questions that people have typed in. And, what I'm reading is a lot of people really love what you're saying, and they still want to, focus on their child's education path. What if the path that the child is choosing is something that might pigeonhole them into a job that doesn't provide them with the flexibility and financial means to own a home or provide their family? Like this person gave an example of how do you encourage a young adult who wants to pursue a very difficult field, maybe a very specific field? She doesn't want to go to college. So I feel like there's a lot of questions around we hear you or we hear you, but.
Yeah, couple thoughts. First, I think humans thrive when they're doing what they're good at and they love. I've talked about that Venn diagram. So I don't want to stand in the way of anybody doing that. Some examples I heard at Stanford, I want to be an EMT, but my peers and parents are saying, don't you want to go all the way and be a doctor? As if there's a healthcare continuum from EMT to doctor with nurse somewhere down here, right? This perception. And I'm hearing that kid say, I want to be on the front lines, saving lives every single time I'm on my shift. Doctors aren't doing that immediate work often with people, surgeons, whatever. I'm not going to argue the point, but this kid wanted to be an EMT. And I was there like, yes, you can be an EMT. That would be amazing. Okay. You just got to make sure you're living in a place where the salary you earn as an EMT allows you to afford a decent place to live. And that might not be Palo Alto. And that's fine. There are plenty of places you can live with affordable cost of living, job opportunities. Okay. These are the hard choices. Like my daughter, the artist, she's got to figure out how to support herself. She knows that. So I can lovingly say, you're so into that. I see it lights you up when you talk about it, when you pursue it. Keep in mind that that doesn't earn a lot. So you're going to have to figure out where you're going to live in order to make that happen. But we love you and we, can't wait to see what you make of it. Okay. That's one thought. For the kid who doesn't want to go to college, I'm not so sure I'm concerned about that. In some respects, a college degree is the equivalent of a high school degree when we were coming up. That is, employers want to see it. But there are so many trades that seem to be lacking in qualified people to apply the trade because no one's going to trade school anymore. And there are great wages that can come out of trades, working in the trades, benefits. Like why are we steering everybody to a four-year college when there are meaningful work opportunities that don't require a bachelor's degree? So there's a lot of fear. I hear it. The economy, 21st century, all of this stuff. I need to know my kid is a what? Lawyer, accountant, like what is it that's going to make you feel okay, they're going to be financially secure? I have a lot more confidence that a person who figures themselves out will find their way, and that our standards, like I've said, they may not be able to ever afford a home where you are, and that's what we've done macroeconomically. The cost of living in the Bay Area, it's impossible for young people, which is why I'm taking myself out on a tour this fall across America with my new book, which is for young people. And I'm going to stop in cities that have jobs and a low cost of living, therefore are hospitable to young people. Okay. Those places exist. And I think we're going to see a great migration of a different kind. Young adults saying, you know what, New York, San Francisco, Bay Area, LA, I can't afford to live here. I'm going to go elsewhere. And that's perfectly fine. In short, I want to center who the kid knows they are and what they want to be, because I know that if they simply pursue what you've made them do, because you've been so afraid they won't earn enough money, they might have all of that money and resent the hell out of you and be miserable too. And I don't think that's anyone's definition of success.
Thank you for that response. This person asks, in an effort to introduce different activities like sports, art, music, science, it can often lead to overscheduling, often accidentally. Is there any recommendation on how to avoid overscheduling while still encouraging kids to find their passions and interests?
Yeah. Okay. So I am very, very anti find your passion. Here's why. A long time ago, places like Stanford, say 20 years ago, they would be asked, what do you want to see in students? And we really like to see people who have a real passion. And it was unusual for a young person to have a real passion by 17 or 18. And so Stanford was looking for where are the kids that have a real passion? Well, now we have a whole, childhood industrial complex that's about find your passion, find your passion, find your passion, impress people with it. And are they really finding their passion, or are they being sort of goaded down a path of you should do this, you should do this, you should do this. That looks like it's your passion. It's your passion, right? Find your passion. Most of us didn't find our passion at 17. We found it in our 20s. We found it when we made bad choices around work and we're like, oh, no, I don't like that. What I really like is this. Often we give ourselves that full permission to know ourselves around our passion only when we're miserable. It's in our misery when we say, you know what, I can't stand this. What I really wanted to do all along was be a wilderness naturalist. Why am I in a corporate office? I'm miserable. Okay, fine. Maybe I'll go try that. Maybe it doesn't matter what people think. Maybe it doesn't matter if my parents don't understand it. I'm so unhappy. I'm finally going to go be myself. And then they find joy. Okay. I'm trying to ward people off the path of first misery, then find yourself. Okay. So 2 activities. I would say you look at a child's day has to be filled first and foremost with what? Sleep. That's the biggest thing. Should be. Sleep, food, some time with family, school. These are all things that matter. A little bit of play, a little bit of activities, homework. That's a full life, right? So I would say to my kid, activities are really important and valuable. They help you figure out what you like. They help you get more skilled at things. What do you think you'd really like to try? And I would let the child's excitement and enthusiasm drive the 1 or 2 activities you have them in. Okay. You want them to drive it. You want them to, I love this. I'm so happy when I do this. Okay. That should be what drives it, not what did the kid who got into blah, blah university do, and let me dial that back because I want my kid to get there. So they're going to be like that. It's not a utilitarian thing. It's a child. It's a life. And, we got to just have a little bit more faith that if we are less prescriptive and we have meaningful work and we have meaningful hobbies and we have meaningful relationships, that our kids are going to yearn for meaning and realness and quality in their own lives. They look up to us. So let's never forget that we are that role model. You want your kid to work hard, work hard. You want your kid to be a reader, read. You want your kid to be an athlete, be athletic and expose them to the things you like. But don't be that kid who's like, that parent who's like, we are football players. And the evidence is that this kid is not interested in that. Have them try it out once or twice, but don't force it. Don't force it. Have confidence that over time, they're going to figure out who they are and you will be proud of them. I need to say something. I don't know if there's a question about it, so I just want to be sure I say it. This is about diagnoses. ADHD and anxiety in particular. My son was diagnosed with ADHD and anxiety and dysgraphia in the 4th grade. And Dan, my partner, and I just didn't really get it. We tried to give him a few of the supports that were recommended, but we never learned about these diagnoses. We didn't, I think, necessarily believe they were a thing. And he was so smart, you see, so smart. And so good. We were just like, it'll be fine. And he went off to a very rigorous liberal arts college and slowly. And he left college after 2 years. My kid is not in college. He's 22. He had 2 years of college. I don't know if he's ever going back. He had a mental health crisis, severe depression, came home, decided to take some time, and got good therapy and began to build himself back up. And we went into family therapy. And what Dan and I were working on was, how did we fail to see that our kids' anxiety and ADHD were big things, and that away from home and the scaffolding, like they were going to show up. And we had failed to support him in ways so that he knew who he was around these diagnoses and knew how to access resources and so on. And when we finally realized that he was struggling, we bought all the books. So if he was diagnosed in the 4th grade, we then bought all the books sophomore year of his college. And by all the books, I mean a set of books by Ned Hallowell that are great about ADHD. We read the books and we flagged up the books and passed them to each other as Sawyer's about to come home at the end of this 2nd year, which turned out to be horrendous. And he sees the books when he gets home. He's 20 and he sees the books on his dad's desk. And he said, Mom, I saw the books. And my heart leaps to my throat because I'm embarrassed that his dad and I are reading up on him. And I don't want him to feel pathologized. And instead, he puts his hand on my shoulder and his eyes fill with love. And he says, Mom, thanks for trying to understand who I am. Sawyer and I were just on a podcast for the Children's Health Council, CHC of Palo Alto, where he gets therapy and where we have family therapy, telling this story. And I'm going to pop it in the chat, for anyone who needs it. I want you to grab this link and listen, because Sawyer tells his truths and I tell mine. And I I say that we had no idea that he was struggling to the extent he was, because he was so damn smart and doing so well. We did not know the internal toll that it was taking. And to hear my son tell a podcast host the first couple grades were so hard for me. I thought my kid was thriving. We're talking elementary school. He's like, it was so hard for me. I couldn't figure out why I was so different from all the other kids. I didn't see that at all. At all. So this is a great podcast to listen to, because you're going to get his perspective. You're going to get mine. You're going to hear the nice questions from the people at CHC. And, you know, he's on a journey, and we are now on this journey to be the parents he deserves. And I will tell you, I needed my kid, who's brilliant in science, to go get the 5 on the AP test, which he did, and the 800 on the bio, like he did, right? He came to me with a 35 on his ACT, like, Mom. And I was like, oh my gosh, my brilliant son, you know, grades and scores, grades and scores. I was that person, failing to see the foundational stuff that my kid needed. And he paid a price, and we have to, and not to blame it all on us. It's all a big ecosystem, but if I can help anybody come to see their own kid as they are, in the fullness of their challenges and interests, if I can help you come to see that kid sooner than I did, I will feel that I have been useful.
Thanks for sharing that story too, Julie. I feel odd having to switch topics, but thank you. I appreciate that. There were some questions around sports. So sports are very competitive here. And there was a question about if there's any sports out there that are even trying to start trending towards learning and fun instead of high-level competition. And then kind of on the flip side, what if my child is in a highly competitive and time-consuming sport, but it's their choice to do it? Do you encourage them to quit to be a child?
I don't know anything about trending sports, so sorry about that. But for a kid who's in a highly competitive scenario, I would just want to be sure it is kid driven. So this is where I would say you want to be raising Jeremy Lin, not an Andre Agassi. The shorthand on that is Andre Agassi was #1 men's tennis player for years, but we learned from his memoir that his dad was really driving that train, and that he was pretty miserable, and he's pretty angry with his dad at this point. But he has all these trophies. Woohoo. Well, it doesn't matter, because he hated it. Okay. Jeremy Lin, who went to Pali High, the rival to where my kids went, Palo Alto High School, the improbably tall child of Taiwanese immigrants, plays basketball and loves it and is good, and gets recruited, goes to Harvard to be a student and play basketball. Harvard does not have a great basketball team. He plays basketball. He ends up getting, drafted by the NBA, and he bounces around and does this and that. He's not great. I mean, he's in the NBA, but he's not like, Michael Jordan. And then he gets traded to the Knicks at some point, and he turns out to be his season, and he just can't but hit his shots. He's just hitting every shot, and people are showing up with signs like Lin Sanity. His name's Jeremy Lin, so Lin Sanity, like Jeremy, like he's got fans with signs, and he's having the time of his life, and he loved every minute. He loved every minute, and his parents said, "We'll let you play basketball as long as you go to church on Sundays." They were like, "We don't get it, we don't understand it, but you seem to love it." And the joy this man has at having played basketball in the NBA, I think, is vastly exceeds the feelings Andre Agassi had about being #1 in men's tennis. It isn't about being #1. It's, do I want to be here? And that's what you're looking for, the evidence of light in your kids' eyes as they talk about it, as they practice for it, as they do the work and rebound from what was hard. Do you hear the joy? And if you don't, can you be brave enough to say, "Hey kid, I know you've been doing this for 9 years. Is it still bringing you joy?" Because we are happy to continue to support and root you on. But the minute you decide, if you were to decide, you know what, we're not going to love you any less, we're going to say, all right, you get to decide. It's your life. We love you. Okay. Remember, they're not a stock you're investing in. It's not return on investment. I spent 9 years dragging hockey equipment to ice cold rinks. How am I going to give that up? If your kid doesn't love hockey anymore, don't you dare be that person who forces them to play it. Okay. We want to have long-term relationships with our children of mutual respect and love and care. We do not want to do things in these childhoods that lead them to absolutely resent us and spend decades of their life in therapy trying to get over how we didn't see them for who they are. I'm sorry, I get a little stroppy, don't I? I'm not yelling at anybody. I just feel so strongly that we've just got to stop treating our kids like possessions and start regarding them as gifts that are magical and wondrous and mysterious. We're supposed to provide love and food and shelter, make them do chores so they learn a work ethic. They come out of our houses, move on out of K-12 once they graduate high school. If they feel this sense of I'm unconditionally loved and they know how to roll up their sleeves and pitch in because they've been made to do chores, they're going to thrive wherever they go. These are the building blocks. I know who I am. I know I'm worthy of love and care. I know how to work hard. If not everything's been fixed for them, but they've had to handle some things themselves, they will have been developing resilience, which will help them when the next bad thing happens. We've got to stop treating them like fragile little things we're carrying around everywhere and set them down and walk to the side and keep an eye on them, but not such a close eye, but just enough of an eye. So in case a disaster comes, we can be there, knowing that every year the distance should be greater and greater because they're becoming this human who won't need us to do everything. They'll just always cherish our presence and our love. Cordelia is loving this so much. She's in tears. Is there a way this can be saved? It is being saved. I believe the purpose is to save it so you can refer back. I'm glad you're enjoying it for sure. Krista, what are we through? Like half of the questions?
Right? Our community just loves you, Julie.
I love being with y'all.
Why don't we focus on next steps? So this question was kind of, your books are absolutely amazing. What other books on parenting do you recommend? And I guess I'll add to that question too, is like podcasts or other documentaries like Chasing Childhood. What would you recommend as some next steps for us if we're interested in this topic?
Well, I have so many parenting author friends and I love them all, but the two that I just grabbed right now are Hunt, Gather, Parent by Micheline Duclef. She's an NPR journalist. She came out with this book, I think, in the last 1 to 2 years. I had the chance to read it early and blurb it. I'm a huge fan of this book. She is a journalist who was like, why are kids in our culture, she's in San Francisco, so stressed out, have poor mental health, but kids in other cultures around the world seem to be happy, competent, confident. So she went and studied families in 3 indigenous communities, one in Tanzania, one in the Arctic Circle, and one in the Yucatan Peninsula. And she took her own 2.5-year-old toddler with her in a backpack. And she was investigating these cultures where everyone seems to know how to regulate themselves and pitch in and be helpful and is happy. And she quickly became the subject because they would point out to her, like, do you need help with your kid? Because she's having a tantrum. And she learned so much by bringing her child with her. They were able to point things out. So this is sort of memoir and parenting with a lot of science, a lot of really valuable tips. Hunt, Gather, Parent speaks to how ingrained parenting is. It goes like hunt, gather, parent. Right? We've been doing this forever. We've gone astray. This book will bring you back. Really recommend for parents of younger kids, but I got stuff out of it for my own, frankly, some of the things she says about how to interact with your kid. And then Bill Stixrud and Ned Johnson's latest, What Do You Say? This tells you how to talk with kids to build motivation, stress tolerance, and a happy home. This is literal scripts on stuff you can say that helps and stuff you can say that's not helpful. Ned Johnson is also on TikTok. He's developing a following there with advice to parents about what to say to kids and what not to say. So definitely get these. These are fantastic, practical books. Can you please add those book titles here as well? Yes.
Oh,
And
thank you, Julie.
podcasts.
Yeah, podcasts, documentaries, like Chasing Childhood was so amazing.
You know, Debbie Reber has a community called Tilt Parenting for differently wired kids. She's the author of Differently Wired. And then she's got a Facebook group, a private group called Tilt Parenting. I think her, she opens the group twice a year. And I think her period of opening it has closed very recently. But if she's not on your radar screen and you have a differently wired kid, you need to know about Debbie Reber. Let me just put this.
Oh, there you go. I think you muted yourself as well.
I muted myself because you'll hear me typing.
Oh, on purpose. Okay, got it. This is perfect.
Yeah. For people worried about addiction, Jessica Leahy, the addiction inoculation is fabulous. She herself is an addict. She tells us that story. She has two boys, late teens, early 20s, and she talks about her pivot as she became sober and what to do in her family, in the language dynamic of her family and the practices to try to not have this generational illness repeat in her own sons. So it's a very, very practical, personal story for anybody who's walking that path. If you haven't seen my TED Talk, you should, because this is going to be, if you had a partner who didn't see this and you're like, you know what, my partner need to hear Julie, send them my TED Talk. It's going to be 14 minutes. And it's a good resource, I think. What else we got, Krista?
I mean, we have more questions, but I also just want to be respectful of the time. We said we could do 7 to 8, and we just really appreciate you in the San Ramon Valley, appreciate all of your work and everything you've done. So I'll pass it back to Lisa.
Okay, awesome.
Okay, Julie, I can't thank you enough for being here and it's such a gift to have you here and to listen to your responses. And I would tell everybody to go to your blog too. And I love that you respond on your blog to most comments. That is wonderful. And I would love to be able to have you back another time. Thank you so much for being here with us tonight. And everybody, remember, you can see this on YouTube. In a few days, we will have it out there, hopefully maybe by Monday or Tuesday of next week. And the film Chasing Childhood is still available for everybody to watch until 8 o'clock tomorrow evening. Thank you all for giving us your time this evening and joining in the conversation.
Lisa, thank you so much. I appreciate you putting my slide up, folks. This is how you can stay connected with me. I'm so grateful. The one thing that I didn't mention, which sort of tracks with the story I was telling of Sawyer, I basically read an article in The Atlantic from 2 years ago that showed me how we were unintentionally being a little too like, let's not, the things he's afraid of, let's make sure they don't ever happen. And there's research, so the sort of overprotective, like loving and caring, and don't worry, you'll never have to experience that thing you're afraid of. There's research that out of Yale that shows that can actually lead to full-blown anxiety in kids, because it's like we're saying, that thing you're so afraid of is so real. I'm going to make sure you never experience it. So I read that article. It just felt like they'd been videotaping us in our family. I had Sawyer read it. He was like, Mom, this is us. And I wrote a piece about the accommodating that I was doing of Sawyer in his young life. I was that parent that always brought pasta with butter and Parmesan cheese everywhere in case he didn't like what was being served. And I tell that story in my blog that Lisa just mentioned. So I'm going to pop a link to that particular blog issue in the chat. This is my story about coming to terms with how we over accommodated Sawyer to his detriment. and you'll see the underlying article from the Atlantic linked in there. And there's just been a huge response to that piece. If that resonates at all, anxiety in kids and the role we parents can play and what we're supposed to do differently, which is to empathize with whatever they're struggling with. You know, I understand you're scared. I understand you're worried. I understand that, you know, that didn't feel good. I know this is hard for you now. Do you want to talk about it? Empathy, 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 and then pause, smile. I know that one day it's not going to be this hard. Look at them, smile, walk away. It's empathize and empower instead of kind of handle and fix and try to make it go away. So check out that piece if it sounds at all relevant to you. I think it's, I'm trying to help others learn from the things I've learned the hard way. So let's take the screen down and we'll say goodbye and thank you and love to come back in person one day. Thanks again for having me. Really great to see all of y'all.
I hope, Julie, that you're going to write another book that we can all get and read.
You know what? Your turn is, this is the book. This is the book for
Oh,
young
I've got
adults.
it.
How to, I love it. This is my tome on adulting.
It's a great
And
book.
I'm getting great reactions from young people. It's a big book. It takes a long time to read, but it's, you know, it's adulting. So it's not, you know, it's not your summer vacation. It's your adult life. That's why it's a big book, but it's a lot of stories and they're very inclusive of people across the gender spectrum and sexual orientation, socioeconomic, mental health issues. It's racially inclusive. I've just really tried to imagine readers of all walks of life as I write this set of advice for all humans. So if you've got a young adult in your life, or if you're in your 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s and trying to figure out if you're adulting the way you want to, you can check out that book. And yes, I am working on another book. It's going to be a book my mother writes with me about our decision to buy a home together and live together as grown women in order to afford an expensive school district. Because it's been amazing, but it's also been hard. And so we're trying to write a book to help other people. Ankita, thank you for being here. Ken, thank you. Amy, thank you. Rashmi, Vivian, Vijayanthi, Allison, Julie, really, Serkan, Sarah, Olga, this is so great. LJ, so great to see y'all. Really, really great. And we just want to thank Krista and Lisa and Heidi and whomever else had anything to do with this. You know, it's hard to do stuff on Zoom, but look at us go. Look at us keep learning and growing and connecting as communities. You know, despite this pandemic, we're getting through it together. Vanessa says, that is my life. We bought the house with my parents so we could live in this school district. I get you, Vanessa. How's it going? Is it all easy and good? What?
Shout out to Vanessa. It's her birthday today.
Happy birthday. Vanessa says it's challenging and gratifying. Exactly. That's exactly. Neha, thanks so much. Thank you. Rachel, thank you. Yep, good. Larkin, thank you. Samson, thanks for being here. All right, y'all. You know what? I have not had dinner yet. And as I told folks when we were just joining the call at the start. So I'm going to leave, although I'd love to stay. I'm going to leave and go get a little food. And I want you to go out into your evening and, you know, read something good that inspires you, you know, that novel, you know, go binge watch your favorite show. Sarah, you need to get some food too. Go get some food. Listen to a podcast. Chat with your partner and look them in the eye and tell them what you're grateful for. You know, look at your kid and just say, I love you so much. I hope you had a good day today. People might be like, whoa, what happened? What's going on? Like, just be like, no, I love you. Nothing's wrong. I just want to be sure you know. Okay. We need to do that a whole lot more.
Well, thank you so much for being so real, so genuine, and you get it and we get it. We love it. Thank you so much.
I'm so glad. Thank you, Lisa. All right, y'all. I'm going to head back into my house. I'm out here in my outdoor office. So I'm going to go inside, but thanks so much for having me. And I wish you the best. And I hope to get a chance to come back your way before long.
Bye. Thank you, Julie,
Bye.
so much. Take care.
Thank you.